What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making this video. Hopefully it's going to be relatively short anyway. I'll try and make it as quick as I can. But I'm making this video in response to a comment on my post-game video for the Steelers and Dolphins game, the Monday night game that we just played. The comment comes from David Erickson. And he says, dude, you'll never be taken seriously saying things like the Dolphins coaching staff is purposely throwing games. First, before I continue on with this comment, why? Because now I've actually started seeing people in the mainstream media who are finally starting to talk about it. But I mean, it's pretty obvious. But anyway, let me continue on. I understand you're passionate, but it's like those fans that say, oh, the coach is a secret Steeler fan, or his uncle is from Western Penn, so he made bad decisions so we'd lose. It's not quite the same thing, and I'll get into the reason why in a minute, but let's continue on with this comment. It's conspiracy theories to explain bad coaching. The real problem is incompetence. Okay, so fair enough on all of that, but here's my response, right? And so the reason why I'm making this video is because I think that it hits, it gives me an opportunity to clarify some things, but also it hits on a couple different points about how I could not be taken seriously. I mean, first of all, my channel is growing, so thank you to all my subscribers and all of the new subscribers that I've gotten recently. But also, again, the mainstream media, you know, I just watched a clip earlier on ESPN where, you know, they were saying that, I mean, it's pretty obvious that, you know, that 3rd and 20 call was, you know, in an attempt to give them an opportunity, right? There's different, you know, people frame it in different ways and so on and so forth. But I mean, look, the evidence is mounting, let alone the systemic way that they design this team. But anyway, let me get into my response though, because first and foremost, and here's the clarity portion, in case anybody had missed it when I had said it before, let me be abundantly clear. So the best and most fair way that you could frame this or those kinds of decisions is massive incompetence, right? So the best case scenario for the coaching staff in those situations when they make those kinds of calls is incompetence. Worst case scenario is that it's just flat out intentional, right? And so I don't know about you guys, but having a coaching staff and a front office who is either actively searching to lose and actively trying to be bad, which most people agree that the front office is doing that, and the front office is tanking by how they, you know, systemically made this team to be bad and so on and so forth. But most people don't want to put Brian Flores and the coaching staff in that same department, even though they should, because one, they do have say in the roster and everything like that. It's not like they have absolutely no say in that. Plus, you know, Flores and this front office were instructed by Stephen Ross to fail. But also, you know, these decisions that are on the field, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Anyway, so, but so having a coaching staff and a front office that either is massively incompetent at their jobs or is intentionally losing, right? Either they suck at their job or they're intentionally losing. That's not really an option that I want to be set with, right? Like, I want another option. I want the option of a competent front office and coaching staff that is going to win, right? That's the option I want. I don't want my only two options to be either they suck at their job or they're intentionally losing. And the evidence outweighs that the evidence that they are doing it intentionally far outweighs any evidence that it's incompetence. The second point though is, and look, you know, again, you guys can, anybody out there, right? I report these things and other people report these things, right? And so then it's up to you guys to make your decisions, right? So, if you guys believe that it's just incompetence, okay. But again, is that really what you want from your front office and your coaching staff? And then if that's what you think, if you think that it's just incompetence, right? And those are things that are losing us winnable games. So if you think it's just incompetence, so then do you really think that you can trust them to get these next few drafts right and to continue to, build this team in the right way? If you think that's what they're doing, I mean, it doesn't really make any sense, right? Anyway, like I said, you guys are welcome to believe that if that's what you think, if you think it's just the incompetence. But personally, I don't believe that. I believe it is, intentional. I believe that in large part because Stephen Ross put the order to be bad. He instructed them to be bad. It was part of the reason why Adam Gase is not the head coach of the Dolphins anymore, because and there was reporting on this that he had talked to Adam Gase, said that he wanted him to tank the 2019 season so that way we could get a quarterback high in the 2020 draft. He said no, he's no longer here. There was also reporting that in the coaching search, it was a major point of emphasis for Stephen Ross that the next coach be willing to tank this season. And then Brian Flores comes in. Chris Greer gets made to be the GM. They bring in Marvin Allen and Reggie McKenzie to advise, whatever. And then what happens? Purge, and then trade, blah, 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 all this, that, and the other, accumulating draft picks and cap space. Then they come out with statements saying that we're going to be aggressive in free agency, all these other things, right? All of this other data. And so Stephen Ross puts the order, right? That's the philosophy and plan that was put in place by Stephen Ross. Tank this season for a quarterback. Who knows? Maybe it's not Tua. Maybe he loves Joe Burrow. I don't know. But Stephen Ross made it clear he wants them to get a quarterback high in the draft, and they will do that in the 2020 draft. That's the philosophy put in place by Stephen Ross and is what is being executed by Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, and Brian Flores. The guys that he brought in to do exactly what he wanted them to do. Okay, so, people can argue that all they want, but the evidence is really speaking for itself. The evidence on field and all of the actions that they've taken, the results in the games, those questionable decisions that come up, all of that stuff, right, is a direct result of the order given to them by Stephen Ross. He dictated this. They systematically designed this team to lack in talent, leadership, proven production, experience, all of those things that I've said. But then it's so funny that people then want to blame that on the players. That is insanity. Why would that be the fault of the players, right? Why is their bad performance their fault when it was intentionally designed to be this way by the front office and coaching staff? That is absolutely ridiculous. It's not their fault that they suck. They just suck, right? They're doing their best. They're pushing as hard as they possibly can, and that is showing up on the field. The players do seem to be pushing hard, we're seeing again increasing frustration, outward frustration from these guys because of that, right? But no, that is the responsibility. So systemically they built this team to be bad, but then the on-field decisions. So if it was any other team, any other season where we weren't blatantly and brazenly tanking, and those decisions came up in a first-year head coach. Any other first-year head coach, you might say, okay, you know, that's just, you know, a hardship along the way. It's a learning opportunity for a young guy who's never done this before, right? It's his first time being a head coach. He barely got play calling duties last year in New England, wasn't even the full-fledged coordinator, right? Any other team that doesn't have the philosophy of tanking, you could say it's just a mistake and a learning opportunity. But when you have the entire philosophy of tanking in place, it's known. You can't then say, oh, well, you know, it just so happened. It's insanity. Anyway. So in addition to the fact that they have systemically done this, there is mounting evidence with each passing game that the coaching staff is at best making massively questionable decisions, right? And so again, in any other situation, it could be just a learning thing, but you can't say that in this situation, in this context. That's why overall context is massively important, right? So, right, people out there that think it's just incompetence or what have you, blah, blah, blah. You guys can choose to believe if you want that Flores' orders by Stephen Ross, from Stephen Ross, to be bad have absolutely no influence on him whatsoever, right? So you can say that, so he brought Brian Flores in and promoted, Chris Greer and brought in Marvin Allen and Reggie McKenzie, and then he said to them, hey guys, I want you to tank this season so that way we can get the #1 pick next year and get a quarterback. You can choose to believe that that has absolutely no sway whatsoever on Brian Flores and his decisions as a head coach, and subsequently what he tells his coaching staff to do, right? Because there are people now, though, that are like halfway admitting it, right? That the coaching staff is in on this. But they're the ones, again, I hate to pick on Doug, but, you know, he's one that says, oh, you know, but now fucking Patrick Graham needs to go because he's bad. Okay, but he was hired by Brian Flores. He takes his orders from Brian Flores. Like, what the fuck do you mean? Who gets his orders from Chris Greer and Stephen Ross? So what the fuck do you mean? It, like, that's insanity. That's insanity, right? So, you know, I mean, to be fair though, Doug did not say that he's on in the boat that it's just incompetence. But so he's saying, oh, Patrick Graham is incompetent, so he needs to be fired. He doesn't think he's intentionally throwing the game. To be fair, to be 100% fair to Doug, I don't want to put words in his mouth. But he thinks that Patrick Graham needs it. But Brian Flores hired him. And everybody beforehand was giving Brian Flores so much credit for the coaching staff that he brought in. But now that, okay, so fine. So then let's take that. If that's the case and Patrick Graham is incompetent and should be fired, then let's look at his coaching staff. It's not his fault necessarily that he had a coach have a health problem, but he had one coach that had to leave because of a health problem. He fired his offensive line coach because he thought that he was incompetent and not doing his job right. Okay, so you fucked up in that hiring for sure. And now Brian Flores is not saying this, so to be fair there, but so then if the conclusion ultimately ends up being that Patrick Graham is, so then you fire him. Okay, congratulations. Then you bring in a new whatever. I mean, we've seen this movie play out 1,000 times. Like really? No, let's get to the root of the problem and stop cutting off the tips of the leaves from the diseased plant when it's the disease is at the roots, and we're just trimming the diseased leaves off and thinking that that's gonna help anything. It's absolute insanity. So anyway, but if you believe if you choose to believe that those orders given to Brian Flores and the front office or whatever, the orders themselves are not influencing their decisions, and then, you know, like what Brian Flores tells his coordinators to do, right? If you don't think that has any influence, then how about the fact that they're getting paid to do that? Because again, that is the philosophy that Stephen Ross has put into place. He's made it pretty clear even in himself, right? So, I mean, like, I just, it's mind-boggling to me. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me, right? So, but that's up to you guys, right? If, you know, I personally don't believe that. I believe that, you know, the guy who was brought in here and paid to lose games is doing exactly that. He was brought in and paid to tank this season. I don't know why people think that Brian Flores is somehow the exception to that in this whole power structure, right? The front office, most people agree that the front office is doing it. But why is it that for some strange reason people think that Brian Flores is the one that is exempt from that? That is insanity. No, he is on board with it. He bought in. That was, I mean, really? Like, so what? They just didn't have that conversation when they were hiring Brian Flores? So he didn't tell Brian Flores, hey, I'm gonna make sure that the front office makes your team super bad, super inexperienced, super young. I'm gonna make sure that your team gets rid of all of the proven veteran leadership with all the proven production and experience. He didn't tell him any of that and said, hey, Brian Flores, come on, come be the next coach, and we're gonna like, really, you guys really think that? And so then what? If he did tell him that, and if he did say that is the philosophy going in to this year, then what? Brian Flores vehemently disagreed in the meeting and then ultimately signed the contract to come here and do it anyway? He was super upset about it in the meeting when he's talked to Stephen Ross, you know, about tanking, but then signed anyway, right? No, and juxtaposed to Adam Gase, when Stephen Ross told Adam Gase he wanted him to tank this season, Adam Gase said, no, I won't do it, and then he got fired. I mean, really? Okay, anyway, I mean, to me, that's absolutely crazy, but whatever. And the third thing is, though, is, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people think about my perspective, right? I mean, obviously, there's people out there that disagree with me. There always gonna be people that disagree with me. Fine. But that's not gonna stop me from doing this. My primary goal is to provide facts and data and then give the most accurate analysis based off of that facts and data as I possibly can, right? But this organization does continue to prove me wrong, and my channel does continue to grow. And so, you know, I mean, I love that. You know, obviously, personally, I love that. But I love it mostly because the truth is starting to really get out there and penetrate to people, right? Because that's what's most important for me, is just making sure that I'm speaking the truth. I start with the facts, I apply logic, I formulate an analysis, and then I provide perspective. You guys can choose to disagree with my perspective if you want. That's fine. That's up to all of you guys to figure out for yourselves, and then you can choose to subscribe to me if you like. That is how this works, right? And that is the whole idea behind, you know, like democracy and how we choose our elected officials, and the whole idea behind the primary system and why we do what we do now. So we can ultimately choose who's best. There's other people out there like Dudley and TD and K Flexen, right? I agree with K Flexen a lot more. He seems to be the most logical out of all of them. I agree with Doug sometimes, to me, and I like Doug. He's got a good heart and means well, but you know, he's super naive, I think, but ultimately, like, all of them are ultimately on board with this tank, and that's the one primary way that I differ from them is I'm absolutely not on board with this tank. And so look, you know, it's up to you guys to determine. First of all, I want you guys to listen to them and get their perspectives and see, you know, the arguments that they're making, and then I want you guys to take that, and then I also want you to take the stuff that you're seeing, and then I want you to determine for yourself on whether or not it matches up and makes sense. Okay? So believe your eyes, because what your eyes are telling you is reality, right? So the product that you see on the field and the stuff that goes with it, and then whenever there's questions, whenever you have questions raised in your head, like let's say when they run a 3rd and 20 play, 45 yards, you know, that's their defense. It's 3rd and 20. Their offense is 3rd and 20, 45 yards away from the goal line, and our defense is an all-out 8-man blitz with 3 guys deep, right? Blah 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 blah. When you have questions like that, take what I say, what Doug says, TD, K Flexen, take all of us together and determine for yourself which person's, or, you know, and it could be a combination, right? You could take things from, you know, certain points, and that's good, and you should, but determine for yourself which analysis makes the most sense based off of the things that you are seeing for yourself. And that's what it's all about. So anyway, I do appreciate the comment though, there, David Erickson. Obviously, you know, we do have some slight disagreement there, but I get it, you know, and I get where you're coming from and everything, but give you your shout out. I appreciate the comment. I love the discourse, right? So that's always wonderful as well. And again, this was a good opportunity for me to be able to clarify some things, as well as, you know, touch on a couple, you know, key aspects of this whole thing and this whole situation. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it, and keep getting in there. You know, I like getting, you know, lots of different people's perspectives and opinions, and continuing this conversation. That's another major reason why I do it, is to have that conversation and to and again, look, you know, like I said, I mean, it's week 8 now, but finally, you know, we're starting. And look, I know I was just about to finish up. I'll finish up on this though. And look, again, I've been consistently saying the same thing from the start, ever since Adam Gase was fired, and then the entire purging thing began, and so on and so forth. I've been consistent from the beginning. I've been saying how much of a disaster this was going to be. I was saying right from the jump that it was a tank, and blah 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 blah, all those things. But look how the progression has gone in the fan base and in the media. It started out prior to the Laramie Tunsil trade. It started out with everybody being like, man, Brian Flores is going to be the next Don Shula, and we're going to be super competitive with him. Look at what he did with the Patriots and their defense in the Super Bowl, even though it's been proven pretty definitively now at this point that they didn't really need Brian Flores, because their defense is far better than it was even in that game. But, you know, they're like, man, look what he did, blah, blah, blah. Look how he came up, blah, 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 all this other stuff. He's going to be wonderful. It went from that, and everybody's saying that the Dolphins are not tanking, and we're going to be competitive, and it's going to be a good day in South Beach, and blah, blah, blah. It went from that to the general population of fans and media then saying, oh yeah, but after the Laramie Tunsil trade, oh no, you know what, now it's clear, now it's obvious that they're tanking, but it's not the coaching staff, and it's not the players, it's only the front office. It's solely the front office. They're just clearing the roster so they can systemically be bad, which is not a good place to be either, but systemically be bad so that way they can get a high draft pick, blah, 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 blah. And now we're at the point where now the mainstream media and a lot of people in the fan base are starting to wake up and realize that some of the coaching staff, at the very least, has to be in on this or could potentially be in on this, what have you. And now that conversation is beginning to be had more fervently in the mainstream. Why? Because it's fucking obvious that this entire regime, from Stephen Ross through Brian Flores and the rest of the coaching staff, is in on it. The only group that I believe is not in on it, well, actually two groups. One of the group doesn't, no, two groups. A portion of the fan base and the players. The players are just put in an unwinnable, untenable situation. And it is what it is. And so it sucks for them, and I feel super bad for them. And that's why I totally agreed. Minkah Fitzpatrick was smart, man. He got out while he could. And I bet you anything Xavier Howard right now is pissed at himself for not getting the fuck out of Dodge, you know, when he could have. He could be on a different team right now playing, you know, well for, you know, a team that could be contending. Anyway, so, but at least not having to deal with this. So I've been consistent the entire time. People have been, look, I mean, I understand sometimes people just need to be proven and given, but look, I thought it was pretty obvious from the very beginning. There was a few people that were with me then. That is growing now, and I'm happy to see that. But look, man, I mean, we all gotta wake up at some point and get to this conclusion, because I mean, it's just so obvious. And especially then if you look at the progression that I just laid out, man, it went from everybody being like, nah, we're gonna be super competitive, blah blah blah, to now it's obviously a tank season. The front office is definitely in on it, and the coaching staff might be in on it. That is now the mainstream narrative. So we'll see. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna get up out of here. Again, thank you for the comment and the opportunity to clarify and to add additional context and so on and so forth to this discussion. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my videos on my channel with your friends and your family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. As you see, I definitely entertain them and answer them and get to them as much as I possibly can. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.